Eight, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, welcome to the 12th Dimension, and I am joined again by the wonderful Natalie Zett. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Actually, I'm living in Minnesota, so it's either a snowstorm or now high winds. But other than that, we're doing great. We learned to survive, right? Yeah.
Cool.
Good to see you again, Andy.
Yeah, you too. Sorry. So, we're not really going to be covering paranormal, are we, tonight? But it is kind of on that, going out that way a little bit.
That intro was quite paranormal-y, though. I mean, that's very like, woo, okay, yeah. So, yeah.
Wait till you see the new outro.
Oh, wow.
If you can stay awake.
I'll stay awake. Yes, it's only the afternoon here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's all right. I'm not with it.
I know.
Oh, never
I'm
am.
not either.
So it
There's
doesn't
no point
matter.
never being with it. Yeah.
No, it's boring being with it. Anyway, so you're going to be talking about ancestry. Is that correct?
I will. Yes, I will.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. So
So
you want me to
you
just
want to
start
start?
yapping? Yeah, I can definitely start. Just run my
just
mouth, right?
Start and go, and we'll get some questions in, and I'll think
Okay,
of
that
some as
sounds
well.
good.
So
That sounds good. Well, I was on, I forget when I was on. It seems like it was like a while ago, but at that point, I don't remember any, but I introduced you all to my independently published book about
yes,
a disaster that happened in downtown Chicago in 1915 that apparently not that many people have still heard of, but it killed one of my relatives. And that was a long time ago.
yeah,
But what happened was that story, and this is what I'm going to jump all over the place. Besides publishing the book, yeah, you know me. I also started a podcast, and the podcast largely because of some of the questions you posed in your show. You saw things that I did not see, and I thought I rushed to get the book out because my mother was in the midst of dying, and it was about her family, and I wanted her to have it. But then in the months that it's taken to mourn her, but also catch my breath somewhat, I've been able to just look at I think whenever you do a creative project, it's really hard to see what's happening. And then you step back a little bit from it And then it's just like, whoa, what is that? And then it takes on a life of its own.
Yes.
And it goes out into the world. And as people are seeing things that you never said, or seeing things that there's unintended things, there's things that give people comfort, there's things that give people questions.
Yeah.
And so I think as I've been looking at this, I ended up on a lot of paranormal shows because Amazon, in its infinite wisdom, put my book in occult fiction, and I thought, what? There are only a few paranormal aspects of the book. I mean, it is definitely about a lost ancestor, relative who seems to be communicating with the main character. It's fiction, but it really isn't. I just had to fictionalize a lot of it because I wasn't around in 1915, though some days it feels like that. And I had, especially today, after the long winter, but I had to use my imagination, use the stories of the departed relatives that I did interview, who are all dead now at this point, and how to cobble this thing together. But what I realized, Andy, and I don't think I shared this with you the first time, is that as I was working on this book, I realized that it was about Western Electric, and people probably don't know what Western Electric is unless you're a little bit older. But Western Electric at one point blanketed the world with all of its innovations in the late 19th century, early 20th century. It did telephones, it did any kind of communication, it did radar, it did war efforts, it did everything. Motion pictures, when sound was introduced, it was like the Silicon Valley on steroids. And it employed a lot of immigrant families in Chicago, immigrants meaning Eastern European and Southern Italian, which my family was Eastern European contingency. And these people were working class, and many of them could do the manual labor, but English wasn't the best and all that sort of thing. And so, but what they did do is every year they would sponsor a company picnic. And in 1915, they had their last company picnic because they chartered a boat, and all these people climbed aboard, and the boat was already unstable, and 2,500 people were thrown into the water in the dirty Chicago River, and 844 died. 844 in downtown Chicago. And most of them were young, like 19, 20 years old. Entire families were wiped out. And as I've gone on these podcasts, and particularly yours, I thought, why is the Titanic remembered? And why were all of these people forgotten? And I thought, I don't know. I have suspicions because of the way certain classes of people in this country were treated. It was pretty well known. There's some stuff about my folks that have been written. I mean, my folks being Eastern Europeans, it's not very flattering. Besides, being the stars of all the Dracula movies, we were also just thought of not being quite up to par and all that. And again, because there were no unions or no representation for these people, and Southern Italians as well, there was a little bit of compensation for what happened, but for the most part, we weren't the famous people. We weren't the beautiful people.
Right.
And our voice, we had to survive. We did not have the luxury of creating a history, and it got lost. Chicago forgot it. The world forgot it. 844 souls. And I thought, what the hell? It was really disturbing. And the other aspect of it was that my aunt who was killed, 19-year-old aunt who was killed, was not a Western Electric employee. My grandmother was. And my grandmother gave her the tickets.
Yes, I remember you saying.
Yes, and I thought, and I the gravity of that and the obligation of that, I thought, she should have been on that ship. She would have been on that ship. And I thought, whoa. And I think the emotion of that, not just the emotion, but the emotion. And then I thought, dear Aunt Martha, I owe you one. And I thought, I will, as long as I'm alive, I will do what I can to keep the memory of this thing and this event and all those 844 people. I will try to keep you front and center. And my attitude, Andy, too, was the book won't take care of me. I take care of the book. A lot of times people, they want to do a creative thing. It's like, I'm going to make all this money, not with this. But it's not about that. I have a day job. No. So that was how I think the reflections of the last, since I talked to you last, I realized like the fog of grief, my own grief has kind of faded a bit. I can see.
Yeah.
And I thought, what did I do? Holy crap. And the other thing for me personally is I'm so introverted and I'm so private. And now it's just like had to be out there representing this whole tribe of people. And it's very uncomfortable. But you know what? It's like, again, my promise was I owe you this. I owe you this. But it's not a bad
Yeah.
kind of obligation. It's a privilege to be alive at this point, and because perhaps I shouldn't even be here. It's a privilege to represent, to walk among, to represent my dead and represent all those dead. And am I doing it well? I'm doing it the best I can. Of course, I screw up and stuff like that, but that's part of the fun of just being like, okay, now what do I do? Uh-oh, and
What's next?
and I think, well, but I think you're creative. I think when you try to do things differently, as I did, I was not going to. I was an established writer by the time I did this, but I never took on a thing like this. It's a massive book of family history, of Chicago history, of American history, and it's also an indictment, not directly, but it says, okay, corporations, why are some lives considered not quite as valuable? That age-old question, and that goes, it's not just this country, it's every country, right?
Yeah.
And anytime a new group of people comes into a country, they have to deal with the loss. And many of my relatives couldn't even write their own name when they came to this country. And so again, it's a privilege to be here. And I don't often think about that. Just think, oh, this didn't happen. And I think it's given me more of a sense of gratitude. And also in my own podcast, I've tried to just lure people in to say, what are you doing about your family history? What are you doing about, are you looking at that? And what can you discover? So I always encourage people not just to be spectators, be a good audience for sure, but not just to be spectators, but to participate in your own life. In your own life. I've talked enough, Andy. I'm going to take a drink here, but you can ask a question.
Yeah. No, that's fine. So, what was the most difficult part for you with writing the book?
Well, it was very, I don't want to even just say emotional. It was feeling like I'm out of my depth. It was so complicated and it took years. And I think it was the hardest part was that when I was in the middle of gathering the information, like over 25 years ago, when I first got this, I was involved in a car accident, and it took me about 8 years to kind of get my memory functioning again and speech functioning again. So I had a little vacation, sort of, and then I had to pick up unintentional. I mean, I was still functioning somewhat, but I really had to kind of. I got rearranged by that, and so I had to accept that, and it was a horrible experience. I mean, the horrible thing was I looked okay because at that point I was doing martial arts and all that stuff. So I looked like, there's something wrong with you. It's like, there's plenty wrong with me. I can't remember I can't remember what I did yesterday. So I had to do that. But thankfully, I kept enough notes from when I was doing the work that I was able to bring back the memories. So I had to really deal with my own demons at that point, as well as deal with the past. So it was, and I think that when something like this happens, when we're in the midst of a creative effort, you think, what did I do wrong? Why aren't things going easy? And it's like, it's not easy because this is life.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get handed a mess. Go ahead,
I was going to say, if it's easy, then it becomes boring, I think.
Well, it was not boring.
There's no challenge.
There was a challenge, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think having a challenge makes a big difference, regardless of what you're doing.
Yep, I can say that now, but at the time, extreme self-pity. I thought, oh, this is terrible. Oh, why me? And I think I had to go through that.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's just I was not a good sport. And you write these people that have these motivational things, they survive fires and all that. It's like not me. It's like I'm thinking, cursed life. I'm not a real good sport. I am Eastern European to my bones, so it's just now what. But I think now I realize that I chose to still somehow stay present. And then when I started to get better, what happened was the consumer DNA testing came about, and one of my coworkers strong-armed me. She said, "I really think you should do that." And I thought, "I don't wanna do that. I know all my relatives."
Yeah.
Whoa. So that reignited it, and I thought I found all sorts of other things that were going on, so I got back into it, and I learned how to this family story that I wrote is very, very, very complicated, and I thought, "What do you wanna do, Natalie? Do you wanna make something sellable, or do you want to make a record of your family for future generations?" I chose the
Yeah.
latter, and I wrote as if no one's going to read it.
Yeah.
Same as I podcast as if nobody's listening. I don't care. I wanted to be true to the story, even though I was
Yeah.
making it fictional, and I had to take on sometimes controversial things
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
difficult things. I left a lot of stuff out, but I had to tell the story of what this was, and I had to tell, show by virtue of what this immigrant experience was like, not to make them a bunch of, you know, they were so strong, they were so tough. Oh, it broke their hearts. They died, terrible
Yeah.
things happened. So it wasn't as if the suffering ennobled them, but nonetheless, it's why we're here, why I'm here, my sister, her children, now at this point, grandchildren, all this, all of us are
Yeah.
here. And what do
Yeah.
we do? And so, and again, being able to share that story, the biggest, I think, gift of staying true to something, whatever your creative endeavors are, staying true to it, even it's not about getting fans or likes. It's about being true to something. One of my
Yes.
closest friends gave my book to her dad as he was dying, and it was the last thing he read. And it brought him such comfort and such hope. And I thought, I did not intend that. I wasn't trying to write an inspirational thing, but it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought, damn. So I think if we're true to what we're supposed to be doing in this life, even though
Yeah.
we might not get the likes at the time, it's like there's something about authenticity, even in this really weird world of ours. No
Yeah.
comments, about what goes on here, but it's one of those things where, like Emerson wrote that the certain heartstrings will vibrate in your direction, and they will be
Yeah.
empowered and they will feel strengthened. Not everybody, because definitely this is not for everybody, because it's not a happy book, but there is triumph,
Right.
there is hope at the end, and it's just like life does go on. And when I was part of how I ended up in the paranormal realm was reluctantly, because stuff was happening as I was doing the research on this woman who died, stuff that I could
Yeah.
not explain. I definitely knew it was a real thing, but I thought, "Oh, not in my life, please." But it
Oh.
happened, and I thought I had to be true to that as well, and risk
Yeah.
being ridiculed, risk being thought of as a kook, but I thought, "What does it matter? Look at my whole family, and we're all kind of goofy in some ways." So, I had to get past that ego part of it. So, that's part of any creative endeavor, as you know, right?
Yeah.
As you're
Yeah. Yeah.
doing your own thing. So,
Yeah.
so it's taken off without me really doing that much.
Well, that's
So,
good.
I guess, I guess.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
It
touch
makes it
people's
easier
lives.
for you then.
What's that?
It makes it easier for you then. You can
I guess. I
not, I won't say sit back, but you can kind of chill out a little bit and
No, a
let it
little
do
bit,
its
and
own
not that
thing.
much.
No.
Mm, no, but, it's not a bad thing, because I really thought I was done with it when I got it out there. I thought, "I got it out. No one's gonna read it. Whatever. I was like, I did my part. Okay. I said
Yeah.
I would do it. I did it." And now let's see what's happened in the last week. I got all this interest from a Facebook group I'm a part of, not on the book because they don't know I wrote a book, because you can't promote on it, but I posted a photo of
Yeah.
the home in Chicago, and it drew all these likes and interest, and they were talking about "Oh, I lived in that neighborhood where my great-grandparents and my aunt and everybody else lived. Oh, I know that
Yeah.
house." I thought, "You know that house?" Because when I was
Ah.
doing the research, I was living in the past. Literally, I'd go to Chicago. There's an area
Yeah.
for folks who aren't from the United States in Chicago it's basically they have all these things that are called workers' cottages, and they were built small for little families that came, mostly immigrant families. They were
Yeah. Yeah.
nice, um, but a lot of the people in 1915 were working for Western Electric or companies that supported Western Electric.
Yeah.
So there's not a house on that block that wasn't affected by that. But I didn't really see that when I was doing the research. But these people who are still alive now saying, "Oh yeah, I went to this church. I saw that house," and they were taking photographs and giving them to me. It's like, "This is what it looks like now." I thought, how in the hell do you know this house? I mean, so it was just like it was sparking something in people. And then people were literally digging up my dead and showing me photos. Oh, look what I found on Find a Grave. Is that your person? I said, yeah. And so all of a sudden, my family is kind of front page news again, not in a way, but I mean, with a small group of people who care about the history of their city, Chicago. And of course, as you know, Chicago's a colorful place, but this is one disaster thing that happened in Chicago that got lost. And with Chicago, let's see the big fire, the gangsters. I mean, we've got so many things that have gone wrong there. This one just faded away. So keeping it alive, stoking the fires is important. And I was talking with, there's a person who founded the Eastland Disaster Historical Society 25 years ago. And he wants to promote the book, and I'm kind of surprised that he wants to do that. So he wants to do something with that. And then, of course, my own podcast. So actually, it's like the book continues in different forms as I'm realizing how it's touching people's lives. And again, had I not been true to it, probably none of this would have happened. If I'd make it marketable, make it palatable. It's like it would have been gone and nothing would have happened to it. It would have ended up on the cutting floor. So yeah, I think part of it's taking care of trusting your creativity and being the steward of your own creativity. So,
yeah. So have you had, other than the guy that wants to do that piece on it, have you had many people contacting you with feedback about the book?
Yeah, I have, and I've been surprised. A lot of them kind of come out of the blue, not having heard of this. And they want to know more about it. A lot of them were related to people who actually know people who contacted me, were related to people who survived the Eastland, which surprised me. Then some people are just interested in shipwrecks. I don't know what that is. There's a certain strata of people that really get possessed by shipwrecks and ship disasters, and they contact me. So it's not like it's like tens of people, but a lot of people, it's odd. And then the supernatural stuff, of course, people ask these questions of, do you think you're channeling? And they use all that terminology. And I just that's a hard one for me, having grown up with that on my father's side. And I'm more guarded about that because it's like, this isn't a game. Are you kidding? I mean, I'm very respectful of it, but I tread cautiously. I know it's real. I know what happened was real, but it's not like, oh, your life will be better if you have some fun with the ghosts. It's like, oh boy, if you want to dance with the dead, look out. I mean, it's going to you have to give up part of your life force to let them live. And that's a commitment. It was hard. It's not so hard now. It's easier now, but it was very difficult in the beginning to make that decision to let that part of my family live. Yeah.
Did you do all this on your own, or did you have support from family members?
Oh yeah, support for sure. My late mother, she would read chapters of what became this book throughout the years, and because she didn't know her own history. The backstory is when her mother, who was a Western Electric employee, left Chicago and remarried, had my mother.
Yeah.
She died when my mom was 3, so my mother never had connection to that history. So my mom was in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Again, that's quite a geographic distance from Chicago, where the rest of the family was. The family originally, here's where it gets complicated. The family, all of my grandparents and great-grandparents, for that matter, the ones that stayed here, originally came to Johnstown, which was a hotbed of Eastern European immigrants. They had the steel mills, the coal mines. So I'm a coal miner's granddaughter from my dad's side. And that was a tragedy. He had his own tragedies. So it's just like it's one tragedy after the other in my family. But part of the ones that ended up in Chicago went to Chicago after the 1889 flood in search of a better life, and things didn't work out. So that's the other thing too. And so, but my grandmother hightailed it back to Johnstown, married my grandfather, then she dies. And her oldest daughter, my mother's half sister, said she died of a broken heart. The guilt of giving her sister those tickets. So it's like you can run. And I thought, when I was in the midst of uncovering this and the gravity of it and the emotional parts of it hit me, I thought, oh Lord, what do you do with the disaster that's already happened? I thought the only way I knew to write it, RIGHT, was to write it.
Yeah.
And then just say, it ends here. We're going to talk about this. And I don't care if no one else is listening. I'm going to make recordings. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to write this damn book. My mother said before she died, she's going to finish that damn thing before I croak. And I said, yes, Mom, I will finish this before you croak. And so I did. And so she got it 2 weeks before she croaked. So, but we have a real gallows sense of humor. I think a lot of families that have these awful things happen, which my family did. Personally, I've had a lot of things. We end up with this bizarre humor. My mom had it. My sister and I both have it. It's like, oh, well, here we go again. And so it's a way of coping, maybe not the healthiest, but we get by with a few laughs. But I think some of the funniest people that I know actually have had horrible lives. But I think there's a way to make, my job is not to say it happened for a reason. My job is to make meaning out of this stuff. And so by confronting the past, and also too by standing up for my people, again, this wave of immigrants was not treated very well. The first podcast that I did was about when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. That means elementary school for, I don't know how your system is, but you're maybe about 6 or 7 years old or so. And I was told, I was in an inner city school. So half of us were black, half of us were white, mostly, the same working class strata. We were told that we had to do a family tree, and we had to point our family trees back to the Mayflower. So for Americans at that point, that was weaponized. The first colonists, the pilgrims that came over, the ones, those were the ones held in esteem. And our teacher said, if you can't trace your family back to the Mayflower, you're not a real American. And so, that story. So I came home and I said to my mother, I have to do a family tree. And she said, okay. And I said, and I also have to point back to the Mayflower. She said, Mayflower? I said, yeah. And she said, our family didn't come over until the late 1800s. She said, we're not Mayflower people. And I thought, oh no. And I said, well, what about, don't we have any history? She said, no. All of the records were destroyed in the war. And I thought, what war? I mean, but it was the kind of, she wanted to shut me up because, again, at that point, people who were Eastern European were perhaps thought of as communists, and that communist Red Scare thing, my parents were very afraid of that. And so it's like, Natalie, shut up, just quit asking questions. I wouldn't say that the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, that was the other thing I didn't do because I thought it was stupid and I got in trouble for that. So I was one of those kids. It was like, get her out of 2nd grade, So, but at any rate, so I was told I didn't have a history. And so, and a lot of the kids were told the same thing. So that was part of it too, was kind of like, I'll show you someday. I'm going to show you. And but the interesting thing was this teacher who told us all this, she had a very British, forgive me, I love the Brits, but she had a very British sounding surname who she married into. When I did a little ancestry research on her, she's long since departed. She was from, the family was from Slovakia, the same as mine. I thought, you're one of us. And yet you were taught to hate who you were and separate yourself from us, the rest of us, little ones. So that's the other schizo thing about this whole thing. So not just did I get back into ancestry, but I also said, wait a minute, I do have a history. Okay. And at this point, I was telling somebody I've got 4,400 some people in my family tree. And I've been able to go very far back. Granted, some of them aren't the most, kind of unseemly, some of them, but I was able to go back. I do have a history. But by being told we didn't have a history because we weren't of a certain class. So that class thing it falls in my book, but it also followed me and my family. So part of it too is saying, no, we do. We have that. And it's not so much of a thing now, but there are other waves of immigrants, always other waves of immigrants. And again, being told the same thing. So it does get into present time controversies, all that sort of thing. So it's just like some things never change. So, but part of it is to stand up for yourself and your people.
Yeah. No. So, just quickly, could you say about this podcast that you do? What's the name of it?
Same thing as the book, Flower in the River, because it's the whole thing is about kind of an exposition on like the questions people have asked me in the last year, things I've thought of, and then goofy stories like this one, starting off with you have no family history. How does someone with no family history become a family historian? And I put my quirky sense of humor in there because some of the stuff that happens to me is just so absurd that I have to really talk about it.
Yeah.
And so part of it too, because the story is not well known, and I don't assume everybody's going to read my book, but a lot of people do listen to podcasts,
Yeah.
and a lot of people, I still feel that they need to know the story of the Eastland because it was lost, and I don't want
Yeah.
it to be lost. And also too, I think people that are interested in, because I've been a writing instructor. I mean, I had a full writing career before I even created this book, and I've taught writing at the Loft Literary Center in Minneapolis, which is one of those big deal literary places, but it is a good place, and I've had a lot of good teachers. And
Yeah.
a lot of, as a family historian, I've also I I don't ever wanna be accused of being one of those, "Oh, families are great. Once you find out, who your family is, everything's gonna be great." It's like, "Oh, no, you might find out some stuff." And, like, how do you ethically deal with stuff that you find out?
Yeah.
And and that's the other thing too, people have, there's a lot of trauma. That word is so loaded. I wish I had a better word for that now. It's used so much that it's lost its
Yeah.
power. But it's like, how do you deal with the wreckage of some people have really, really horrible family lives, current family lives, or they've come from people that, you know, there's stuff, let's just say stuff happened. How do you
Yeah.
deal
Yeah.
with that? And how do you wrestle with that? And I really don't have easy answers, but I know it's important to lay down, like, what happens when you find you're related to a murderer? It happens.
Yeah.
Or a predator. It happens.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you, and so I was like, how do we deal with this? And how the one that's happens a lot is, uh-oh, my father's not my father. I mean, my father is, but that happens a lot with
Yeah.
people. And so how do you ethically, I had one person in my life who was just so gung ho on being a genealogist that he just kind of like, would just like steamroll over people. And I said, you're finding out things that you have to be careful of. So how do you create a sense of ethics, a moral compass as you do this? How do you tell people it's not going to be, there's not going to be, family isn't everything? I thought, look at Shakespeare. Let's go back to the old Hebrew Bible, Cain and Abel, hello. It's a lot of stuff with families is not the
Yeah.
idealized stuff that we've been fed in America anyway about the happy family. Everything has to be
Yeah.
solved in half
Yeah.
an hour. I mean, we influence everything, and it's like it's not like that. But how do you deal with the reality? And I think that's part of the thing is just wrestling with some of these darker issues in the midst of my weird humor. But I've
Yeah.
got so many strange things in my family. Besides the Eastland disaster, I had relatives that were in the famous Johnstown flood of 1889. And just when I thought I was done with all that I found out through the genealogical testing that I'm related to Nicholas Romanov, the last Tsar of Russia, who, as you know, his family was exterminated. So I said, "Oh my God,
Oh, yeah.
where do you look?" Um, so it's like, so some of the stuff is so quirky that I couldn't make it up. But I figure I might as well use these stories in a good way to just say, yeah, a lot of us have stuff, and how do we deal with it? So that's the thing. So part of I think the podcast purpose is to cobble out not just what happened to create this book, but how do you create a going forward if you want to do this sort of work? I think you have to have eyes wide open and be
Yeah.
aware that emotionally I've had to pull away from it too sometimes because it's like it's too, when I've recited the book for the audiobook,
Yeah.
it's been, I mean, I've burst into tears because again, it's my mom's history, it's all that loss. It's like, oh, I have to stop. And how do you honor your own journey through this? And um how do you tell a story? So it's not just this person, they were born, they died. It's like, who were they? They were a person.
Yeah.
What was that
Yeah.
person? And
I
trying to figure
suppose.
that out is very hard. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just- No, no. I was just going to say, so if you're doing an audiobook of it,
Hmm.
you're going to be reliving it every time you read that.
How did you know that, Andy? Yes, it's really very, very it's very difficult. And um and then I had to do, as I was saying before we went on the air, the multiple takes because I don't have a recording studio per se. I've got a curtain and a microphone. And then
Yeah.
there's garbage trucks in the back. There's people, blowing stuff up. There's all this other stuff. And it's just like, ah. Um, so I have to do a lot of retakes. And it's like every time I do a retake, um, it's difficult, but it's also, it's like I'll ask a lot of times, like my great grandmother, how did you speak? What was your accent like? You came from Germany, Poland.
Yeah.
You had this kind of interesting. What happened when I grew up with my mother's father, who came from Poznan, Poland, and he had a funny sort of partly American accent, but partly whatever that was. He brought in German, Russian, Polish accent. So they had this odd
Yeah.
way of speaking. It's not like the Hollywood version of this is a German accent. They had part. So, they would speak in their native language. They would go into English. They would mangle everything. And I wanted to be true to that. And I wanted to get the voice. What does the voice sound
Right.
like? And it took multiple takes, but I finally got the voice. Is it a form of channeling? I don't know, but I move out of the way and it's like, great grandma, how did you sound? Great
Yeah.
grandfather, how did you sound? And so that takes a lot of dying to self in a good way and letting them
Yeah.
live. So it's like
So
going deep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, how did you get the answers for like when you was asking them about the accent?
The accents?
Yeah. So when you saying about how
Um,
they spoke, and you just said
p-
like, Granddad, how did you speak? Grandma, how did you speak? How
well,
did
part of
the
it's
answers
from
come to
memory.
you?
Yeah,
Oh, right.
part of
Okay.
it's memory. Part of it is listening to, current YouTube types of things like accents and stuff, but part of it is just how
Ah,
did they
right.
speak? Since I grew up
Yeah.
with it, I grew up with people that some did not speak English very well. My grandmother, my dad's mom was from what is now Slovakia, and I
Yeah.
just thought she was speaking in some weird, made up language. I had no idea this was a real place or real anything because I had no sense
Right.
of our ethnicity. I thought, why did she talk like that? And
Yeah.
but I remember it. You remember? I think when you were a child, you remember, how people spoke. But because I have a multiple ethnic background, I had to kind of
Yeah.
code switch from this person to that person to that person. And all my friends, they also either had parents or they themselves were from one of these countries. So they too
Yeah.
would speak in another language and we would do this, whatever. Our teachers, my German teacher was from Ukraine. My
Right.
social studies teacher was from Ukraine. And so we learned, we would give them a hard time. And at least my German teacher, she had survived various refugee camps and just all kinds of loss,
Yeah.
but she was so joyous and she's long since departed. But I thought, oh Lord, I mean, I just think of and I have a lot of family in Ukraine. And
Yeah.
so there's that going on too. So it's part of it just pulling in what I remember and then just listening to people who are really good at it, but trying not to be a stereotype, trying to be a
Yeah.
real person. And also too, what does 1915 Chicago sound like? American sayings, slang speeches, things like that. So I had to study that to say how would they have expressed that language? What was their music? What did they do?
Yeah.
What kind of all that stuff. So part of it's going into, and I did the best I could, but I didn't get it all. I really didn't get it all. So that's part of what the podcast is to kind of make up. Well, I forgot this. This is what I've learned since. So it's
Right.
with genealogy and with writing. It's always you're never done. You're often wrong. And you
Yeah.
have to kind of do a lot of course correction because somebody dug up somebody and it's like, uh-oh, they did a DNA analysis or something, whatever. But I'm just saying that there's always something it's never done. And
No.
you do the best you can. But I think it's still fun to take it on to see what will happen to you. And I think you change, I've changed in the process.
Yeah.
Um, and but I would say back to any creative endeavor that anyone's doing, whether it's writing a book or doing their artwork or whatever, whenever your light gets big, you will also attract the other stuff too. The people that wanna kind of not do the work, but they wanna just, get away,
Yes.
So and that's happened, especially when I ran a theater company, it really happened there, but it's just like, "Oh, here they're back again." So, it's being aware that to walk with your eyes wide open whenever you're doing this type of endeavor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Those things.
that's what when I started doing this, I learned that. I suppose the hard way, but I think if you learn the hard way, then you know where everything is down the line.
It's true,
Whereas
true.
if people are telling you and showing you, it's like you're not learning for yourself.
Not
So it's
learning for
not.
yourself.
It
Mhm.
doesn't work to me. That doesn't work. But I think the hard way is the best way.
I think sadly
Definitely.
it is.
Yeah. It
Sadly, it's
is. Yeah.
yeah,
At the
yeah.
time, you just think, can't be doing this anymore. And then you get past that point, it's like, right, another lesson learned, then move on.
Exactly. And unfortunately, we can't. I always tell people you can't. There's these, I call them the energy vampires, not the fun ones, but the energy vampires that come to take your life force. And it's just like you cannot avoid them. And they've spent lifetimes doing this. Literally, some of them seem to be it's like, you again. But the thing is, I think once recognized, it's like you have the strength to move them out. And I think that's part of what it is too. Again, being an advocate for your art, whatever it is, your podcast, your work, and just saying, you know what, move on, or I will banish you. I will vanquish you. So, and having to be kind of tough too with certain things. And people there's a woman in town who, she's really great. She's an African-American woman, and she has a podcast called Dr. Verna's Virtues. And she's like several minutes, and she'll just talk about, you know what? She said, there are people that come to multiply or subtract from your life. Which ones are you going to let in? It's like, Dr. Verna, you got something. I mean, it's so simple, yet so profound. So I've had to be aware of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a difficult one. So
yes,
how long have you been doing the podcast for now?
Not very long, just I think I only maybe just for a few weeks. I mean, it's been in my head for a long time, but I think I just have like 3 episodes out. So I've been doing one every week.
Yeah.
And it's just me rambling. I mean, I try to make sense of myself, but it's just but what's interesting, and I'm sure you've had this too, the ideas, I've never I usually would sit and write. Now I talk and then print it out, and it's like, oh, it's a different way to write. And it's unnerving, but it's like, wow, that writing is smarter than I am on a given day.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go on.
No, you go on. I mean, I want to hear what you have to say, because this is kind of new for me.
When I first started doing the channel, originally it was to go out and do paranormal investigating, the Facebook group. I used to have the website, but I've got rid of that because it was the website. It was working for a while, but then it just become redundant. It was just sat there doing nothing.
Okay.
And I was paying for something that wasn't actually doing anything.
Okay.
So got rid of that. But I forgot what I was going to say. So I used to write everything down.
Yeah.
And I mean everything.
Did you? Yeah.
Now I just make little notes now and again, and that's it. And everything is either done on video or audio podcast, and that's it. So it's like I'll sit down, open my mouth, and then what comes out comes out. And I think that's better than writing stuff down. For me, it is anyway.
For you, yeah. I'll get
I know
there. I'm not there yet.
It's there. It's just getting it out.
Yeah.
Some things now and again I do. I'll just go back a bit. I do have to write the odd thing down only because I'll forget what the idea is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then once I've done that, I've got Postit notes everywhere.
Yeah. You write things down. You just you just don't know. Yeah.
So once I've done that, then it's like that's cleared the space in my head then for the next thing. But then I've got about 10 different things going on at the moment. So
yeah, of course you do.
I won't even call it hard work because I enjoy doing it, and it's more of a hobby.
Yeah.
It started off as a hobby, then it become fairly expensive hobby.
Yes.
But
yes.
Now,
it has, Andy. Yes. Yes.
But now, because I didn't buy everything all in one go, just got a bit there, then I'd upgrade and. Like with the camera and the microphone and the light.
And the other microphone.
And then cables and then new computer and then new monitors. And then I've got the stuff that I used going out investigating with different lights and all that kind of stuff. So it's just every month I'd buy a couple of different things.
Yes.
Until I got... So now I'm at the point where, Touchwood, I don't have to get anything for at least... I want to say 2 years, but
wow, I understand.
I hope I don't have to buy anything for 2 years now.
Oh boy, for me, like I totally, I think I get what you're talking about. For me, it's just like when I felt I have to do the audiobook because the person I originally thought could do it actually couldn't, and they were much more experienced with acting than I ever was, but I thought screaming into a microphone, you can't do that. So I thought, let me just take it over.
Yeah.
I thought I can't make it any worse. And it's just like, yeah, it's my book. I know what I want to say. But to your point, the equipment, what do I need? And then trying to get help on YouTube. Is this the right person to listen to? Whatever. And it's all that's like, and learning by making terrible mistakes, very expensive mistakes, but selling gear back, whatever. Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't actually look at any of the hints and tips on YouTube. I just thought I'm just going to go and do it the way I want to do it.
Oh.
And I thought, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, sure, someone will tell me it's not.
Oh my God, you're just gifted. I don't have that. I just don't have that. It's just like,
I just thought, you know, if I either go for it or I don't, and that was it.
Wow, impressed,
so,
admire, you know.
But then it's like I was putting some of the videos in playlist category before because I deleted one of the playlists that I shouldn't have got rid of. So I was putting some back. And I'm like, I don't even think I could sit there and watch any of them back, like the early stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it's just a bit awful.
Too much, too painful. Yeah, I don't. I understand that. It's like, yeah, it's its own kind of trauma. It's like God, yeah. It's very, but it's cool though. It's cool you're doing it, and it's cool you're getting it into the world, and it's cool that you know, I think of all the people that aren't doing what we're doing at this moment. You know, it's just.
I do speak to a lot of people about this, and a lot of them are like, I could never do that. I went, but I don't. I can't get my head around how. It's hard to explain, not how or why other people couldn't do it. Yeah. Because at school, I was really shy. I couldn't speak to anyone. Like, I'm talking like 7, 8, 9 years old. I was very introvert.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah.
And even now, if we go out, it's not now that I'm shy, I just sometimes can't be bothered speaking to anyone. It's different. But to do this, if I was to sit here and think how many people watch it or how many people are watching it now, I won't do it. I just see it.
I understand.
Me and you are doing a video chat, and the rest of the people, the viewers are.
There's nobody listening to this. It's just you and me.
Chat room.
Yep.
Like text chat room. That's how I see it. And if I keep that in my head, then I'm fine.
That's
if
what
I think
I do
about
too.
the numbers, it's like no. I can afterwards.
Yeah.
When I'm just looking at the analytics and all that. But at the moment, cannot think about that.
I can't either. It's I think of, I don't know if you ever listened, and if you listened growing up to the old radio shows. My dad was a radio guy, so I used to listen to those old radio dramas, and there was this intimacy. And when I'm doing the podcast, that's what I think of, that old time radio. And I just think, you know, mine's not theatrical, but I just think of that intimacy, talking to that one person, like, what do you think? What do you feel? You know, and it's so invigorating. And I just see that one person in front of me, whoever that is. And I remember that feeling that I got from listening to that theater of the mind. And I hope that I can evoke that in my, you know, on the fly creations. We'll see.
Yeah.
But that's the goal, to bring it back, take us back to 1940. You know, that's my goal. So
yeah. Good luck. I hope it all goes well.
I hope so too. I hope people are touched by it.
There's no reason why it won't, is there?
I don't think so. I think there's always, as I'm learned with this book, it's like somebody's listening or interested, and it's like, wow. When I saw what happened and how it took off without me really doing that much, because I was just barely functional the last year after my mom died. It was just like, whatever, you know. And with being neglectful, I was fairly neglectful of any kind of whatever. I just did bare minimum because that was all I could do. And it's like, okay, now that I'm focusing in on it, it's like I'm trying to be a better steward of it and a better curator of the story and of the people that come into my life. And I'm in a headspace where I can do that now. So it's very cool. Yeah. So you can even screw it up and it still was okay.
Yeah. So you said, do you pre-record your podcast? Or do you do it live?
No. I pre-record, I edit, Andy. I listen to myself because I'm writing on the fly. It's like, what do I want to say here? I think it was the way I wrote my book. I don't outline. I don't organize real well. I just kind of go, as they call it, I write in the dark. Or there's a little British saying, I'm a pantser, meaning that I just fly by the seat of my pants, but it has to make sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I don't see what I'm doing until the second take. Like, for example, I thought an exchange of tickets killed my great aunt, but an exchange of another type of paper, my mother's sister writing this thing and giving it to me brought life. So I thought, so one exchange killed, the other one brought life back. So I thought, So, and I started to see these metaphors and these funny little things.
Yeah.
It's like I can draw these almost like little sermonettes. I got a theology degree, so occasionally I do give a little sermon, but don't tell people that. But I do see the value in storytelling. And how does it relate to you? Andy, can I touch you with my story? Does it play? We used to say, does it play in Peoria, meaning Illinois, like these small towns in Illinois?
Right, okay.
Yeah. So, right. So it's like, I don't know. And does it hit different audiences? I don't know. I'm not trying to water it down, but I'm trying to hit deliberately, to the heart. And see what happens, And am I going to hit it all the time? Probably not. I never do. But sometimes I will, though. And that's the thing. So I've got enough confidence in my writing from the past that I think I can do that.
Yeah, but then you got to remember there's different types of people listening and reading it. So one bit might hit one person.
Yes.
Another bit is going to hit somebody else. So you've got all that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And really, like you, I'm not worried about it. I just want to make sure that it's the best that, again, it's like I'm representing this tribe of people. So it's not just me. It's like all these dead people. It's like, okay, dead people, I don't want you to get mad at me. So I want to do the best I can because I don't want them coming after me. So I have a great fear and respect for them. It's like, there really is a sense of again, like I said, again, I pointed to obligation, but not in a heavy sense. But it was just kind of when I was younger, it was just me, myself, what do I care? My family, it's like now there's this attitude of I'm just the next branch until the next branch comes and falls off. So what do I leave behind? The other thing, again, memento mori, you're a future dead person. What are you going to do? And I always have to remind myself of that. So so there's all this. It's cool. It's fun. It's we know where it's going to end up. So it's just like, what do we do in the meantime?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. But I do think you should do a live one. Really do.
Do you, Andy? Well, we'll see.
Just to push your boundaries that little bit, to push your comfort zone.
My sad boundaries have been pushed so hard. Maybe at some point I will.
I'm a
train wreck, Andy. Jeez.
I do want to do it. Don't worry about it.
Yes, I am.
I had to do. Well, I didn't have to. I chose to.
You chose to.
I did a recording for a show that's going out in America. Did it a few weeks ago now.
Oh yeah.
And we was going to do it on Teams. Is it? We like a video conference sort of thing. He was going to do the recording on that.
Oh, okay.
But I wasn't sure what they wanted, so I was speaking to them. They told me what they wanted, so I said, "Right, it's okay. I'll do my own recording, and I'll email it across to you."
Yeah.
So 7 takes it took, and on the last one, I'm not going to. There's a couple of people that know what it was about, but I'm not going to say anything until it comes out.
For sure.
But on the last one, I got that far into it, and then I messed up. I thought, I'm not going back to the beginning and do it again. I just stopped, said, right, I'm going to redo that bit again, and then I start talking from that point. So that it's all getting edited anyway and put into a TV show, so they can take the bits out that they want and put it all together that way.
Yeah.
So, I think I'd still be there doing it, trying to get it right. And so I had the notes on the screen. So I had the notes there behind the camera.
Yeah.
I'm looking just off camera, and then I'm reading the note, and I still couldn't get it right.
Really?
That's what I'm saying.
Wow.
So that's why I think I feel I work better doing it live than having notes in front of me. But
that's
we'll
great. I mean,
see.
that I'm saying that in admiration. I'm just not there,
You will do. It took
You
me
think, huh?
to get to this where I am now.
Yeah.
Nearly 2 years,
Really?
and that's pretty much every week for 2 years.
So that's probably a good pace to keep every week. So I think it seems like you've done it a long time.
Sorry.
How many podcasts have you done? Do you know? If you have a number
Oh,
or videos, podcasts, whatever, do you
right.
know?
So I can, if you bear with me 1 second, I'll just get YouTube up and it should tell me on there. So
Yeah.
if we go on analytics, sorry. Where's it gone? Analytics and content. So lifetime. It is. It doesn't. Oh, I think there's about 200 videos, and it's not telling me anything now.
Oh, cursed thing. What's wrong with that?
But it's about 35 to 38,000 views, I think.
Whoa.
And it just said 308,000 impressions.
Oh, the impressions. I love the impressions. Like, what is that? It's like
I don't know what
ghostly
it is. It
touchings
sounds
of
good.
whatever,
Yeah,
I
it just sounds good. But I think
it does.
I've done over 200 videos. I
Wow.
know that. But
Whoa.
then I go out doing investigations. I've done. It's come up now. Sorry, here
What
we
do they
go.
tell you?
Content.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just trying to. No, it keeps going off and coming back on. 43,316
Whoa.
people have watched the videos so far in 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
So when I say that out loud, it's like that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Well,
Yeah.
impressed, great respect. That's a lot. It's a lot to keep the momentum
But
going with this stuff, I think.
whether
And
they enjoyed it or not, that's another story.
well, that who cares? It's just you, right? You talking to yourself. That's how I look at it too. You and you're being your best friend. No, seriously, I
Yeah.
think that says a lot. The perseverance. I mean, I think that we all get tired and everything else, and we just kind of slog along. But there is a dedication and a commitment
Yeah.
that you obviously have, and bravery, I would say.
I think
Yeah.
you have to, because there are some days it's like it's nothing to do with the guest or anything. I'll get in from work and it's like, do you know what, I
Oh.
can't be bothered tonight. And I'm
Mhm.
like, got 3 hours before I need to get anything ready. I'll be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, but I used to. I don't know. Do you get nervous
Um.
when you do your podcast?
Not
Anxious or
really.
anything?
I want to do a good job. I tend to over prepare, but that's comes from being a writer. And I was a
Yeah.
writer out in the field, and I had to always go be, I was always getting politicians and celebrities and stuff. So I really had to be on my A game and
Yeah.
anticipate people kind of going a little wacky on me. So I
Yeah.
tend to over prepare, but then I can pivot when I'm over prepared. I think that's the
Right.
thing. But that's just my personality. There are times where I would wing it, and
Oh,
it depends. But it looks like you're winging it. But you're very experienced. You probably just do some things instinctively that you think, well, I don't really prepare. It's like, yeah, you probably do. You know what you're
I
doing. So
think I wing it every time I do one of
I
these.
don't know. I don't know. You don't come across. I've met people who are winging, and it's just like it's
Yeah.
apparent that they are. But you're very prepared, connected. I would say,
Right. Okay.
engaged. And
Yeah.
I think that's
Oh yeah,
important as an
definitely.
interviewer. Yeah, I mean, I've been on both sides of this now, and it's just like, really staying with the person that's the hardest thing sometimes,
Oh
particularly it's like, "Okay,
yeah.
you're not that interesting," "Ooh." So
it's not just that, it's when people go really deep into their field.
yes.
And I've not quite a bit of the time, I'm not gonna say a lot of the time,
Yeah.
I have no idea what they're
What you're
talking,
talking about.
because I've never studied what they're telling me.
Uh-huh.
And then but the bits that I do get, I put together and it works out itself anyway.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I think that's the hardest part, is when you've got somebody that's studied whatever it is they've done for, like, 20,
Uh-huh.
30 years,
Yeah.
and they've been university, and they've got degrees, diplomas, and PhD, and
Mhm.
everything on it. It's like, you just need to talk
Stay on the topic.
yeah,
Mhm.
straight down the middle, make it easy,
Mm.
layman terms, that's it.
Exactly.
I don't think
Exactly.
what it was called. A
Yeah.
lot of people do, but you do get the odd one that just go, and it's
Yep.
like, "I have no idea what you were
You're
talking
talking
about."
about. Nobody else will either. That's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There's a guy that he's coming on again in a few weeks called, George Mitrovic. He's an
Oh, yeah.
Australian guy,
Yeah.
and the first time he was on, he people in the chat, and I was there, and then when Deb was there as well,
Uh-huh.
and we're all sat there like, "I have no idea what
What
you were
he's talking
talking about
about.
right now."
That's
And
actually
then
pretty funny.
he actually said, he went, "You probably don't know what I'm talking about." I went, "I haven't got a clue."
No, but
And
somebody
then
does.
he just simplified it straight away.
Did he really? Was he able
Yeah.
to? Okay.
Well,
That's good.
yeah, the best he could, so
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
yeah, it all worked out well in the end, and
That's really cool though, but what
become
good
good friends with
experiences.
him. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so it's all good.
That's great. That's great. Huh. Yeah.
Right, do you wanna go for a break? 'Cause we're at the 1 hour mark.
Yeah.
So should we do a 5-minute break, and
Yes.
then do you wanna talk about the book afterwards?
Yeah, if you want me to talk about the book, I can talk about the book. So yeah, that sounds good.
If you okay talking about the book?
I think so, Andy. I can do it. Yes. I'd love to.
Cool. I just
Thanks.
wanna double check. Right, we'll see you sorry.
That's
I'll see
okay.
you guys in 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
See you soon.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
And we are back.
We are back.
Yes, we are.
Turn this up again.
Oh, God. Sorry, I've got a really tickly cough.
That's okay. It's been our winters here are really dry, and it's the same kind of thing where everybody sounds like they're gasping for breath, and it's like
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yep.
It feels like swallowed flies or something. It's awful.
Yep. I get it completely.
Right. So, should we talk about the book then?
Sure, we can.
What do you want to cover?
Well, I was thinking of course, we've opened with the discussion of the infamous Eastland disaster that no one's ever heard of in Chicago, 1915. Google it; it's out there. But that's the first part of the book, and as I've narrated it, I thought, Lord God, that is the longest chapter. What was I thinking? But it's a huge chapter that starts from 1915, goes back to the late 1800s, and ends up in the early 1950s. So it kind of covers the whole family. And the end of the story, and it's how a story that was destined for evaporation was recovered by the efforts of one person who decided to write it, and that was my mother's older sister, and she kept sending it to people. No one cared about it, and my author character was the only one who responded. So it's kind of like what you were talking about when you're putting out this information, whether it's your videos or your podcasts. There's always that one person who might catch the fire. So I think that's the other thing too, with depending on what you're trying to do with your writing, your creativity, if it's for, I don't know, it depends on what your mindset is. But for me, it was just wanting to be true to the story, but also the second part of the book is very much a fictionalized version of my family. My character is very much like me, but more so. And it brings into the late 1990s, 1990s, 1998, 99. And just it's kind of like, what was life like then? What was going on then? And how did the connection of a past event that this character never heard of, the protagonist never heard of, this person was following in the footsteps of the dead woman all of her life. And literally I was, and I didn't know it. I think that was probably one of the first realizations that maybe my life isn't my own. Maybe it does. It's a repeat in some ways. And that didn't fit my philosophy at all. And so I think when faced with this type of thing, when faced with something that counters a very hard, let's say, bled in dogmatic viewpoint, it's like, are you willing to change that based on what's happening to you? And it was like one of those types of things. People have asked me, well, do you believe? I thought, I don't believe, I experienced. And there is a big difference in believing and experiencing. I knew the stuff. There was a lot of paranormal stuff that went on, but more, it was the coincidences. I think the most exciting things were all the coincidences. The more I went into the story, trying to uncover my people, the more I would meet more people, or the more things would open up, or the more whatever. And it was just like I was on the right path. That I knew. There was almost like, as I paid attention to the dead did pay attention to me as well. And I never thought that was possible. And it was, the other part of that journey was how flaming lonely it was. And I mean, not that I go around, I'm one of those people, it's just like, I'm not really what I would call a people pleaser. No one would ever say that about me either. I just kind of say what I think. And, man, I feel bad sometimes that it's like, well, but I really would rather be true to myself. I don't want to hurt anybody, but by the same token, I'm going to say what I think. But this was especially lonely because of the supernatural stuff that was happening, of the coincidental stuff. And what I would attempt to tell people about what was going on is like, yeah, sure. Or else, if you want to clear a room, just start talking about genealogy. It's like, people will leave, and I'm an introvert. So it was like, and it was also being okay with being alone and trusting that there's a prayer in the Jewish prayer book about walking with good companions. You want to walk with good companions. So as some of the people cleared out, one or two would come forward, and it was just like, oh, that's who you need. So I think it was basically navigating that chasm and trusting that it would be okay, but
Yeah.
it's not always filled with rainbows and unicorns and, ice cream, whatever. So that was
Yeah.
so part of the change I had to go through as an author, and then also, as you pointed out, getting out of your comfort zone, which I don't really wanna do that, but it forced me into a
Yeah.
place where I thought, "Hell, I can't do this," but I did it, and it's like, "Oh, I guess I can." So
Yeah.
it's one of those kinds of things that, like, ugh, and I think so there were so many things that transformations that had to take place in me for this creative thing to come forth, and
Mhm.
and then as I was putting this thing together, also was a writing teacher, so I was telling people the very things that were happening to me, I was able to share with them and just saying things like, "Not everybody has your best interest at heart, so be careful who you share what with,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and otherwise the creative spark, everything you're doing can get lost in the ridicule, in the whatever, and so be very careful, be very cautious, don't seek short-term pats on the back. It's a bad exchange sometimes, just be willing to be lonely until that point
Yeah.
comes when you get the people that need so that part of it was just kind of growing up as a writer too and trusting that. So there was that
Yeah.
learning, but also about the transformation that happened to the main character as they became a little less flaky, a little less guarded, a little less with a chip on the shoulder and more you really are loved, not like the people you thought you'd be loved by, but by a whole tribe of people that are your people. And once you
Yeah.
started assembling the pieces back together, the growth happened, the compassion happened, the willingness to take the risks, as we pointed out
Yeah.
earlier, happened. And so that in a sense it's a very specific story, but it's also a story to anybody who takes that kind of risk, at creative risk, whatever your art form is, it's like trust it and you will screw up and you will do all these things,
Yeah.
but boy, you will not regret, I think, being true to whatever your muse is. So I think that's probably the main message. So, yes,
Yeah.
uncovering the dead is great. Talking to the dead is fun.
Yeah.
Learning to be in a sense, you know, being able to I don't wanna say help people, like, as if people are helpless, but assist people in their own journeys. Being able to encourage people, being able to give feedback. I think I'm much better at doing that at this point than I was because
Yeah.
of what I've been through. And I would have to say um, compassion and empathy, even though those words, again, are so overused, but those are
Yeah.
important characteristics of a person because it says, "Okay, I'm strong enough to do this," because you can't really do that if you don't feel I couldn't do it when I didn't feel secure. It took a lot of
No.
security. Yeah. So that's a lot of what happened in the book, but the book is about, I would say, transformation and about the dead really aren't that quiet, but sometimes they just need to be attended to, and they can give you so much. So, yeah, I think that was a
Yeah.
lot of the message of the yeah.
Cool. So, what was the most shocking? I don't want to use the word discovery. Um, the most shocking part of doing the book.
Um, the most shocking part of I suppose when the history behind the book is I got this writing from my mother's older sister that outlined this particular part of the family, which I grew up knowing nothing about.
Yeah.
The biggest shock was the fact that I had relocated up to the upper Midwest where I'm living now, where I thought I was by myself, had no family, no friends. I thought I was a clean start. I wanted to get away from my immediate family. And when
Yeah.
I was started to look at this document, I realized that my great great grandmother and her children lived just across the border from where I moved. So there was
Ah.
something about so even though supernatural stuff aside, I can't negate the fact that I moved to a place that felt familiar and familiar family, right? I
Yeah.
moved to an ancestral hotbed and didn't know it. So it was one of those kinds of things, it was very humbling, and I thought, "Whoa." So that was shocking, and I thought, "Wait a minute, how much of our life are we think we're in charge?"
Yeah. I was just about to ask you. Do you
Yeah,
think that this was pre-written for you?
I wonder. There's this whole thing. I mean, I've got a master's degree in theology. I'm not going to go into that rabbit hole, but there's this thing about predestination. It's like how many options do we actually have in a lifetime? I think we we
Yeah.
do, but well, let me just talk about myself. I thought, boy, am I clever doing this move up to Minneapolis, St. Paul. Nobody comes here. And it's like, oh, I'm not that clever. And all I did was move back to where part of us came from. So I think perhaps there are only so many points in a life that a person can go on. And if you're paying attention, does everybody pay attention to this, Andy? I don't think so.
No, I don't.
I don't. I think some have never been troubled by a reflective thought in their lives because it's the wiring. It's not
Yeah.
that somehow that, oh, I'm just so whatever. It's like I'm really not, but I'm very sensitive. And I was born into a family, at least on my dad's side, where people told fortunes, and that's what they did for a living. And we've got
Yeah.
Romany, we've got all these, somewhat, the people, that's what they did. There's certain
Yeah.
stereotypes that they did live out. And as far as I know, that family on my dad's side, the first relative I know of that was burned as a witch was in the 1500s in Slovakia. So it's just like that stuff traveled forward. And
Yeah.
so I think there is a wiring aspect, something in the DNA that makes me and the members of my family predisposed toward this. Do all want to do this? No. It's like some of them won't touch it. But for me, it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, well. So I think not every family is that lucky, quote, air quotes.
Yeah.
But if you have that, it's like, well, what do you do with that? Some people are very gifted at playing piano. They're very gifted at doing whatever. It's just like they didn't do it. It's just they were born with it. So I was born with some of this, and that's what I did with it. Like my mother's sister used to always say when I would fly down to Chicago, she said, "You're so brave. You're so brave." I said,
Yeah.
"On Pearl, all I did was buy a damn plane ticket. I'm not brave." She said, "It's what you did after you got off the plane." I thought, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." So, yeah, I think it's what I did after I got off the plane
Yeah.
in
So,
Chicago.
so I'm guessing you. Oh, do you believe you was destined to do this then?
It looks like, yeah, it looks like I was, yeah,
It's
it looks
not
like all of,
accidental.
yeah, I would say that's, people, I used to envy people, Andy, that had this calling of this one thing that they wanted to do, and they generally figured it out when they were 19 or 20 years old. And I've always
Yeah.
been kind of, as
Yeah.
people would say, flaky. I mean, I've had millions of jobs, I've done millions of things. I can't, I get bored easily, maybe attention deficit, I don't know, but there was this one thing that I am meant to do, and I don't
Yeah.
think anybody else could do it in this way, or if they could, they wouldn't. So it was just like my aunt said I was her last resort, so I'm probably the last resort, and yet I
Yeah.
decided I was gonna do it. And so part of it is decision too. I think we're all perhaps called to do certain things, but sometimes we can't, we won't, we don't wanna hear it.
No.
So we say
So do you
no.
think? Yeah. Do you think it's to do with timing as well?
Yes, absolutely. Because again, I probably shared this the first time. This story, my mother's sister gave me this story a year after my father had died in 96. And I
Yeah.
was open at that point. I would not have been open before when I was footloose, fancy free, having a good time. It's like, oh, that's cool. Throw it in a drawer. At
Yeah.
that point, I wanted connection because I was so my stage of my life had been disrupted completely with my father's death. And for the first time, I felt that level of I just felt like I was hollowed out, like something just cut a
Yeah.
knife through me. And I thought, "What do I fill that with? There's nothing. He's gone. Oh my gosh." And then this comes into my life. So I think it was timing. That's very
Yeah.
perceptive of you. And I think and I was ready to say yes to the call of, "I'll
Right.
do this. I'll do this thing, whatever this thing is. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'll do the
Yeah.
thing."
But did it feel right for you to do it at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slowly. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting into because I was reading this document realizing, "Holy crap, I wait a minute. I knew what these places were where my great-great-grandmother was buried." And I thought, "That's just across the border, 45
Yeah.
minutes from here." And then there was all that, and then there was, it just like it took uncovering was very slow. And so, but slowly but surely, it took hold of my life and became I would say a magnificent obsession. There's a book called Magnificent Obsession, but I would say it was a magnificent obsession,
Yeah.
and I thought, "I'll do this thing." whatever this thing is. And
Yeah.
there was no map for this. That's the other thing too that was exciting and also terrifying because I thought, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. But
And
you seem to know what to do
I seem to
or
know
meant
what
to
to
do it.
do, blundering through. I mean, mind you, falling into holes, blundering through, getting hit by a car, all this stuff, that happened too. So it's just part of the fun.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, I mean, maybe I needed my brain rearranged. I don't know, but it definitely got rearranged. So, um, I think, and also accepting my own mortality. It's like, one day you're going to be an endpoint too. So that's the
Yeah.
other thing. You're going to join the gang here. So what will you do? When I was in Britain, and traveling through the cathedrals and living up there in Scotland, all those little
Yeah.
every freaking cathedral had that little skeleton or some weird, horrible drawing of a skull. And then, as you were, I once was, as I am, you will someday be. And I thought, oh
Yeah.
hell, but we don't see that here. But I thought, you know what? It was a remind, and I never forgot that because I was in my 20s when I was doing that, and you don't want to be thinking about that then. But I knew it was
Oh,
right. I knew it was
yeah.
right. And I thought, "Okay, little skeleton head, I bow to you, yes.
Yeah.
So what
So
am I gonna do?"
have you been to Slovakia to
No,
do
I
any
haven't.
research?
I
Have
have
you not?
not been there. No, I haven't, been to Slovakia. I haven't
Have you
really
any
traveled that
plans?
much.
No, I was gonna say, have you got any plans to go and seek anything out?
Depends, it really depends on a lot of things, but it's not that far from my thinking, where my folks are from is very close to the Ukraine border.
Right. Okay.
And so, a lot of my relatives that are there in Slovakia are dealing with that, and so
Yeah.
it's like I don't wanna be the sorry, there's a book called The Ugly American Tourist kinda going, "Oh," it's like, I wanna be
Right.
aware of what's
Yeah.
going on there, like, "Hey, why don't I have a McDonald's hamburger?" Or I've seen them, it's like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
stay home." So I don't wanna be that, I wanna be very sensitive, aware. I would like to, that would be probably be the only country that I would wanna visit outside of coming back, of course, to the UK, but 'cause I was quite fond of my time there, but that's the one that feels like home to me. That and I would say in America, the only place that really feels like home outside of where I'm living is Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So there
Right.
are certain places where the heart is, and I know Slovakia is one of those places as well.
Yeah.
And, because. And I'm very proud of the village that my dad's father came from because they were one of the few places that actually hid all the Jewish people
Yeah.
and
I
saved
remember you
everybody.
saying.
Yeah, I'm so proud of them, and
Yeah.
I would say that again. And the other side of the family, well, there's things not to be proud of, so there's a balance that these people did,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
karma. But they did it well, again, just ordinary people, as we pointed out, making choices
Yeah.
to do the right thing, and they risked their lives to do the right thing, and, it's
Yeah.
it's that's what I like about doing this ancestral family history stuff. Yeah, you find the goofy stuff, but you find a story like this, and it's just like, "You guys did this. Wow.
Yeah.
I could maybe do better." That type of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, have you any plans to do another book, like a continuation of it, or
Oh, I don't know.
have you got everything in there that you think you need?
I think I've got enough. I think the podcast will fill in some of the blanks, the things I left out. Again, as
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, I rushed it through to get it to my mother, so there are mistakes that I made that they're not horrible
Yeah.
ones, but stuff that I would just look at and kinda go, "Eh." I think if I write about anything now, it's going to be probably more fictional short story types of things like I was doing earlier. And now that I know that I can publish these things myself, I just want they're more fanciful, darker. Definitely. My mother was a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe, and she used to read those things to us when we were kids. So it's like, no wonder I like this stuff. But there's a few things I've uncovered that I really want to fictionalize, like, strange grifting relatives, things like that. I really want to bring some of this stuff out. But I think I'd like to go into a total different direction,
Yeah.
and get away from some of this other stuff, but definitely stay with the fiction, which I wasn't sure I could do, but it's like, yeah, I can do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely get into some dark fantasy stuff.
So, yeah, will you keep your name or will you change it?
For some of these, depends if lawsuits will ensue. Just kidding. But I think depends. Um, really, it does depend. I probably will keep it because I
Yeah.
think there's a way where, unfortunately, I've uncovered some ghastly stories in the last year or so of some stuff, and it's just like, how do you tell the story and get justice where justice doesn't exist? You get a lot of justice by telling the truth through fiction.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And you can tell a story in such a way where it's like you have to get past, I think for me, one of the first stories I wrote when I was a very, very young person was about a very highly controlled organization I was part of, AKA a cult, but we didn't
Yeah.
recognize it as that, and I thought, "Someday, I'm gonna put you out of business." And once I
Yeah.
got out, I did it in such a way where it was humorous, no names were mentioned, it was silly, but because it was that on that level, it had more of a punch, which I didn't realize, and it actually did help put them out of business, and I thought, "Shoot."
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, I was, like, only, like, 21, 22 years old, and I didn't feel very powerful, and when you're in a situation like that,
yeah.
it was just a very strange kind of warped situation, and it's like, I learned the power of writing back then, and I learned that what I say, and this is well before internet was even, anything.
Yeah.
I thought, but that sucker traveled all over the place, and people say, "You see what she did, blah, 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 blah." And somebody would, I also thought people that were abused in the situation much more than I was would think of me as, "You're so great." And they said, people would say, "How dare you air the dirty
Oh,
laundry of this out in public?" And I said, "How dare you not?" People were emotionally destroyed. Somebody was killed. Are you kidding me? And so, but I had to, but that was the sort of post-adolescent righteousness of, that's so much fun, but
yeah.
you can do it in a strident way, but you'll lose everybody. But because I have this warped sense of humor about things, it's like, well, let's just make
Yeah.
this funny,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then go, like Wednesday Addams, yeah, to the pilgrim, howdy
Yeah,
pilgrim. So, I mean, I think it's that kind of thing. So I probably will, but I still need, because I also work, full time as you do, and I do all these
yeah.
other things. I still have to kind of balance life out with all these
Yeah.
stuff, So podcast, audiobook, and just connecting with people again who are, I get surprising number of people that come to me and it's like, okay, what do you need? How do I need to respond to you? What are you looking for? And often I'm surprised by their questions and what they need. And it's like, oh, okay. I'd like to write a book on how to write. Um, Not like how to make a sentence, but how do you deal with creativity? How do you deal
Yeah,
and also how do you protect yourself? That's the biggest thing about when you want to do something magnificent and keep that idea going without basically watching it get watered away. How do you deal with that? And as my writing instructors taught me, I've lived it, and it's like, so sort of an advicey kind of thing. So I might do something like that. But for
yeah,
the most part, Andy, this is more than enough stuff. It's like, um, but it's
yeah,
okay. I'm again, it is a privilege to be able to tell this story of my dad. Otherwise,
yeah,
I think it would have gotten lost, you know,
yeah,
or end up on a PBS documentary that nobody watches. I want it to be personal. I want it to know that it really affected my whole family,
yeah,
and it was hell for them. It really was. And but how there is a resilient spirit too, that I'm standing here because of that.
yeah,
So yeah, all those things. And I want to impart it to other people too. I'm a nice person.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
wanna just make sure that's like, "Okay, I want you to feel good about, what you're doing, and I respect you and appreciate what you do." And, I wanna have that exchange of creativity with another human.
yeah.
So there's all
So
those things.
have you had anyone claiming to be a relative with writing this book?
I don't think anybody
Anyone
would wanna come near us,
anyone
but
anyone contact you claiming to be a long lost cousin or anything
w
like that?
well, if I ever become wealthy and famous and all that sort of thing, which I hope I never, the wealth I'd take, but not fame, yuck. That
Yeah,
probably will happen, but because Mrs. Natalie knows how to do the DNA analysis, it's like, "Okay, prove it?"
yeah, yeah.
It wouldn't take very long at all. Um,
No,
no, I think for the most part with our family, I don't know who would wanna be, well, I should say who would wanna be part of this, but it is there, we let's just say we have a series of unfortunate events that seem to follow us, and so, um,
right.
I think that probably that won't happen. Be kinda funny if it did, I'll let you know, but I don't think that will. Um, but we do have, I have people that, have, what I've been trying to welcome is other people that, again, are descendants of people who either died. I hope there's somebody else who is a descendant of somebody who was lost on the Eastland who will wanna write something. I want them to because I'm to date, I'm the only person who's lost somebody who's written about it. other people have written about the Eastland kind of in a clinical way, or they've done
Yeah.
research. It's like a research project, or other people have they're related to survivors. But I'm the only one who's done the dead person story of the Eastland and what it did to a whole family, not just then,
Yeah.
but cascade.
Yeah.
And so, and then put in the supernatural aspects. So I would like somebody else to come. As far as I'm concerned, hey, please come forward and do your own writing.
Yeah.
I always discourage against spectatorship. It's like, I'm in the arena getting beat up here. Get in here with me
Yeah.
and do
Come and,
something,
yeah, come and join me.
lazy. Come on now. I mean, I just
Yeah.
give people a hard time. So, but I really do want people to do their own, do your own stuff. What the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had somebody offer to, and I've worked as an editor for publishing companies in my early years. I mean, like, McGraw-Hill, places like that, and you had to pass stringent editing tests. And I had somebody come to me and said, "Oh, I'll edit your book." I said, "What experience have you had?" "Well, none." It's like stuff like that. It's just like, okay, let me think about that. So people,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. Sometimes it's a strange world sometimes, but
Very, very.
so I'd like to write about the comedy that has ensued through this too, because I've had some really bizarre things happen too as I've done this. As again, as the light gets brighter, there are people
Yeah.
that have tried to, not claiming to be relatives, but they are relatives, but they kind of wanted a shortcut. And it's like, you know what? I'm not J.K. Rowling, okay?
Yeah.
This is not that. But I think it points, when you're shining a light, it also points to people that aren't, engaged. And I know when I have felt that similarly earlier, it's like, oh man, maybe I need to do something besides feel, who do you think you are? It's like, why don't you
Yeah.
do something, Natalie? He's like, okay, I did. So there. But I think it's that kind of thing too, just pointing out the human emotions of all these things, that when somebody does something and it's like, okay, they did it, you didn't. As my early writing teacher said, people are going to be upset with you because you did it and they didn't.
Yeah.
Whoa, that was like years ago. And it's like, I'll be darned, they're right. And so to impart that message to young at heart and younger writers, that are new to the field, that's another one of my, I suppose, missions, to make people take care of their own creativity. So
Yeah.
yeah. So all those
Yeah.
wacky things.
No, thank you for that. We do have one question.
You
'Cause
do? There's somebody here?
yeah,
Oh my gosh, besides us? Okay.
yeah, everyone's being lazy tonight. No one's writing. So this is from Adam. Adam was on the other week. He's from London, but he's living in Slovakia at the
Oh.
moment.
Oh.
I'm not sure whereabouts. He will, if he's still awake, I'll ask him to text it in. But he wants to know, what would you like to do or visit most in Slovakia?
Hmm. Probably just go back to those villages,
Yeah,
and just see if there's, it's surprising me what you sometimes feel and don't feel when you're in an ancestral place. Sometimes
yeah,
there's absolutely nothing, but definitely, since I'm basically Eastern Slovakia for Adam, Osavica is the home of my paternal grandfather, my paternal line, sorry, grandfather obviously, but the paternal line
yeah,
is Osavica, and paternal grandmother is, let's see, Shtitnik and Oshtina. So those two, and again, they're such small villages, but those places. So not necessarily Bratislava, but places like that where I would really like to just feel the vibe. And of course, I have
yeah,
relatives in Ukraine now, who I think are still living, I hope,
yeah,
and I'd like to see them as well. And I have a lot of, they're in Kiev at this point. So while that's going on, I would like to, just how you doing? Because we've done a lot
yeah,
of work
yeah,
here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We have a huge Ukraine community, and doing stuff.
yeah,
So we're trying to write for Ukraine, do things for Ukraine. So we've done a lot of that as well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like the past dramas and tragedies are also now still alive. So it's like, my God, it never does end.
yeah. He's just put, is it, I'm in the mountains.
Which part? Which mountains? The Carpathians? Carpatho
I
Carpathian
have no
Mountains. It
idea.
must
My
be.
geography
Those
is
are the only place I know the mountains
hopeless.
are. So Adam, Sandor, that's an, I am part Rusin, Carpatho-Rusin, as well as Slovak on my dad's side. So I'm of a ethnic minority. Shouldn't say that. They think there's more of them than there are. An ethnic group, let's just say it that way. Correction.
Yep.
Called the Carpatho-Rusins. That my 25% anyway. Then among that 25%, there's also the other mixes of the Romani and the Ashkenazi Jewish and that sort of thing. So Tatras. Oh yeah, okay. That's beautiful. Yeah. Look at that little hamster thing. That's cute. We have one of those in the backyard. So that's that is beautiful there. It really is. It's quite lovely. Not the hamster, but it's cute, but the mountains are beautiful.
Yeah, when you said that, I thought you said you got a hamster in the backyard.
Yeah, we have overgrown squirrels that look like hamsters. Yes, we have my squirrel collection, and the pandemic has done things to my mind, Andy. I mean, I've got friends in the back that are the bunnies, and it's like I've become that person, that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. My mom said before she died, she said, "My God, you're turning into your grandfather." I said, "Oh God." Yes, yep. Talking to those animals, feeding them every day. Yep. Everything's hungry.
Sometimes it's better than talking to humans.
Exactly. I much prefer the dead people and the squirrels, Andy. What else is there? And I'm talking to you occasionally. Yes, Mama's turning into that person, Yeah. I'm going to become little Edie Beale. Maybe people know who that is. Grey Gardens. Is Grey Gardens popular over in the UK?
I've never heard of it.
Jacqueline Kennedy, I'm sure you know, Jacqueline Kennedy, wife of John F. Kennedy, had a first cousin. They were very wealthy. She and her mother became, they were living in this house. It just became decrepit. They were living with raccoons. It's like something you have to see to believe. And they just, Grey Gardens. I thought, oh my God, I'm just a step away from becoming little Edie Beale. All it's missing is doing a cabaret act, but that's that. So I do need to get out. Maybe I'll go to Slovakia and visit Adam. I don't know. We'll see. So yes, sir. It's just wackadoo time. But the blessing of the pandemic, if there is any, is that it did force a lot of us to do creative things that we normally wouldn't do. So there is that.
Well, yeah, it's like I ended up doing this.
You ended up doing this.
Technically, I started just before lockdown. Is it just before? No.
Oh, did you?
I don't. Oh, my mind's gone. It was either just before we went into lockdown, or just after the first bit, when we was all released back into the open again, and then we went back. That was it. Yeah. So it was after the first bit, and then we was allowed back out again. So that's when I started doing it. And then it went back into lockdown, and
that's right. I remember that. Yeah,
3 or 4 months. So I'm just sat there because I work in the medical field.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I was still working all the way through it, but in the evening, obviously, because you couldn't go anywhere, do anything, I was just thinking of what to do. So that's when I started doing all this, like the plans for the website and all that. I just put it all together.
Yep.
I had it all set out ready, base planned everything, and then it's like, right, that's there, and just see what comes first and go from there. And that was it. So where we are now.
Pretty commendable.
So, but I thought it was something different to do, because I think more so because we couldn't do anything or go anywhere.
But you did plenty. Look at what you did. Oh my gosh, And here we are. Here we are talking because.
Oh yeah.
Just because you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Met some great people, including yourself. Made some good friends.
Vice versa.
So,
vice versa.
And people that I would probably never ever meet in a lifetime if I wasn't going to do this.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
I do.
Absolutely.
I want to say thank you to everyone. I appreciate everyone that's come on and given their topic of thought.
There's spiel.
So, thank you.
It's very good.
Yeah. Yeah. Do enjoy it. Even on a bad day, I still enjoy it. I look forward to doing this. Even when I'm tired and I think, I can't be bothered today.
Do it. I can't be bothered today.
In this chair, I'm fine. Sit in this chair, turn everything on. Let's go.
Exactly. The magic happens, and then you can collapse later
the magic chair.
The magic chair. I do have my magic
Yeah.
chair as well. So yes, indeed.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I
So
appreciate you, and it's actually. I mean, I had such fond memories of being in England, Wales, Scotland, and all that, and it's just like it's when I hear you speak, it's like it brings back those good memories. It's
yeah.
very nice.
So
Mhm.
how long ago was it you used in the UK?
Oh God, long over 30 years ago now at this point. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, long ago, but the memory stayed with me, which is interesting. It was just so,
Yeah.
it was I don't have any as far as I know, any of that in my ancestry, and yet well, of course, who I was trampling around there, Vikings and stuff like that, so I suppose
Yeah.
some of my folks got around there, but for the most part, I have none of that ancestry, and yet it was just so compelling to be there, and so
Yeah.
it's the stuff of imagination for us to hear because we're so influenced by everything, through
Yeah.
Britannia, and it's just yeah, it was just very when I was a little kid, my parents took us to see Mary Poppins, and I thought, wow,
Oh, yeah.
you're a little kid. It's just I thought I want to see St. Paul's Cathedral someday.
Yeah.
And when I did, it was just like, oh my God, it was just so, like people over every place else wants to see Disneyland. I wanted to see St. Paul's Cathedral, so that's how strange I was. But I
Yeah.
did. There were no birds, but I saw St. Paul's. So it was just yeah, it's a magical place
Yeah.
for me.
No, cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right. There are no more questions. We've only had one tonight.
Yeah.
I think
We've been talking too much.
'cause
That's why, Andy.
probably. I was going to say they're all being lazy because it's coming up to bank holiday weekend because of Easter.
Oh yeah? Really?
Yeah. So we get Friday and Monday. Well, I get Friday and Monday off work.
Oh
So I just
heck, I'm
presume that.
moving.
Oh, are
Wow.
you?
Yeah, that's nice. Bank holiday for what? What's the
For
occasion?
Easter, we get Good Friday and
Oh, is
Easter
that
Monday.
oh, that's right. That's coming up. I forgot. Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So Thursday tomorrow, and
That's
then I'm
right.
off till next Tuesday. So, but
Enjoy.
a lot of people like that work in retail and all that still have to work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's why I
No,
don't
I
work in
know.
retail.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah,
I work for
I don't
government,
want
but
to.
we don't get that. We don't get any time off though. So,
No,
wow.
no, we get bank holidays. I don't work weekends. Don't work evenings.
Oh, oh,
It's
I like it.
amazing. Yeah,
How humane is that? Yeah, I love it.
I still get up at 5:30 in the morning through the week, but
Well, that's okay. I do as well.
it's not
That's
too
okay.
bad.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's when I get
It
my work.
depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I try and get done, get home, get finished, jump on the computer for a couple of hours before the missus and kids and that get in from work and school and
Oh
get done.
yeah,
Play
that's
catch up.
cool. Like catch up. That's
So,
amazing. And you've got the
we
support
do.
at home, right? Everyone's supportive of your work at home.
Um, they're supportive. They don't all get what I do. They don't.
Yeah.
I won't say they're not believing it because they've never encountered anything or had any
Oh.
paranormal experiences. So I won't say they're not open to it. They've just
Mhm.
because they've not personally had anything happen to them.
Mhm. I
It's
understand.
I'll believe it when I see it, sort of thing. Which I get. I
Yeah,
understand that
I do
because
too.
why would you believe in something that when you're in your like in your 40s and you've never had
Mhm.
anything happen? So
Yeah. Experiencing is believing. I mean, it's just like, whoa, then, but you do have to have I think you have to have the experience. So I appreciate where they are. I
yeah,
really
oh yeah,
do. I
definitely,
was like that too. It's like, heck, don't need this.
yep. Here we go. Another one from Adam. It's more of a
Adam.
statement. Natalie, the
Ah, he's
Rusyn
still going
area,
strong. Oh,
yeah, it's
is
still
that
going strong. They like to party.
oh, yeah, they do. Well, let me tell you. Yeah, exactly. The Rusens. Yes, they do. They like to party, and, I'm glad
Yeah,
yeah, there's a revival. There is in this country too. There's a lot of and we all tend to be related to each other too on that side too. It's like because it's such a small it's called endogamy. There's just something we can go into a little rabbit's hole when people in a group tend to intermarry. cousins
right,
and things
okay.
like that's gone and died. Like Ashkenazi Jewish people like that, they were kind of forced into not being able to be out in the world. So that's why you can always
Yeah,
tell if you're part of certain ethnic groups, you can generally tell, and you got
right.
all these thousands of relatives, but you really don't because we're similar genetically. So it's quite the goulash of things. Yes.
Right.
So yeah,
Cool.
but yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So glad Adam's
There
having
you
fun in
go.
Slovakia. What's that?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm just saying thank you for answering the question.
Yeah. Party hardy.
So, right. So I think on that note, we are done.
We're
Unless
done
there's anything
partying.
you'd like to add.
Oh, no, this has been a lot
Unfortunately,
of
yeah.
fun, and I forgot completely that we were actually being, like, witnessed by other people, so I feel like, talking to my buddy Andy, and it's really
Yeah,
good.
I know. No, that's why I enjoy it. It just feels like just chatting and friends
Exactly.
and all that. So
Yeah,
it
exactly.
is good.
Exactly.
Um, just quickly, well, remember on Friday the guest is Amanda Quill from Canada. She's going to be talking about, I might be wrong, but Native American folklore.
Ooh, cool.
So that should be a
Mm,
good one.
that'd be really good,
They're all
yeah.
good ones, but yeah. So she's on then, and
Wow.
without looking at my list, I can't remember, but there's a few. And every Wednesday and Friday in April, I'm doing a podcast. So
Wow. Whew, Mr. Busy,
and
yeah.
and then I'm doing a couple of pre-records just for the podcast as well, which are not going on YouTube.
Okay,
So
very good.
it's yes. So massive thank you again for coming on.
Massive thank you. Thank you, and
So,
keep up the wonderful work, Andy.
and you, and let us know how you get on with the podcast.
Will do, will do. Well, we're
Yeah,
Facebook pals, so you see all my nonsense
yeah,
that I
oh
post,
yeah,
so
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I always post a load of nonsense on there anyway.
I put
So
nonsense, yeah, fun yeah, you put some funny stuff,
otherwise,
I do too. Yes.
I don't do boring stuff.
No, me either.
I'd
Yes.
end up unfriending myself.
I'm my own best
It
unfriend,
would,
yes.
it
Had
would
enough of you.
get to that point.
Yeah. I'm gonna block
So
myself on Facebook so I can't hear me anymore. Yeah, there you go. Enough of
right.
you.
So yes, a massive thank you for coming on. Hopefully you'll come
Thank
on
you, Andy.
again
Oh,
in the near
anytime,
future.
Andy. Anytime you got nothing to do, you just let me know and
Yeah,
I'll fill in the hours and
100%.
yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, really do appreciate it.
Thank you,
So,
Andy.
thank you everyone in the chat for not asking questions, other than Adam.
Hi, Adam.
Um, hopefully they're a bit
Ahoy.
more active on Friday.
Yeah.
Um, we've put the link up for
Oh, thank
the
you.
website, so it's https forward
Thanks. Thanks
slash
so much,
forward
Andy.
slash
Yeah.
www.flowersintheriver.com.
Oh, thank you,
So
thank you, and as I say in my podcast, buy my book, I owe people money. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so there you go.
yeah. I've got to read it out because this is going on podcast, so no one's going to be able
Okay,
to see it. So yeah,
okay.
www.flowersintheriver.com. Yeah,
Thanks, Andy.
is that correct?
Perfect. Yes.
Yep, excellent. So have a great couple of days, everyone. Hopefully, we'll see you on Friday. So that's it from me. Oh, and I've got a new outro. Hopefully, you'll stay and watch it because it took me all of 20 seconds to make. No, a little bit longer
Okay,
than that.
20-second. I wanna see how the master does it.
It,
Yeah.
it
Run
took
that
it
outro.
took a few minutes. Took quite a while.
Uh,
So
I gotta see it.
have a great time. See you Friday. Speak to you all soon. Good night.
Thanks, Andy.